Welcome to the Voices of Pueblo podcast. My name is Gregory Howell, and I'm really excited because we started the 45 Degrees podcast series last year. And they've been so busy painting murals on the levee that we haven't been able to get many of the artists into the studio to actually talk about the whole process. And of course, now Cynthia Ramu, who did the very first podcast with us, really kind of laid out, where we were in terms of reclaiming this world record, which for many of you who aren't familiar with Pueblo, our levee after the Katrina hurricane disaster, every single levee and dike and any dam of that nature, they forced them all to be inspected. And ours got tagged for not necessarily demolition, but during the 1921 flood, when they realized they were moving the river and they built the levee, what they used to fill that levee were oftentimes objects that were found, in the disaster. And over time, those things shift or they decompose. And so if you walked along that particular structure, you could see where the cracks and the ebbs and flows of the walls. You could see that they were really not in good shape. And since the JFK, the Fried Pan, Arkansas project, we built the dam, the reservoir for Lake Pueblo, so that imminent danger of a massive flood wasn't as extreme. So they determined that we needed to lower our levee by 10 feet. And what that meant was a wider promenade on top of the levee. And so for those of you, now you can actually go from pretty much the 4th Street Bridge all the way down to the Grove, and it's a beautiful loop. And now there's shade structures, there's art, there's everything you can find there. But I understand that we've made great progress towards this world record, and there's several different stages. But today, and I'm going to ask you to say your last name again, Tim, because it's one of those great Dutch names that you look at it and you think you can say it, and then it's difficult. But Nijenhuis?
Nijenhuis.
Okay.
Nijenhuis.
Okay, Nijenhuis. But I'm with Tim, and Tim literally has just come off of the wall, and this is 45 Degrees, that's the name of the podcast. It's also the angle that these artists actually have to work at. But first, why don't you introduce yourself, Tim, to our listeners, and then we'll get into the story.
Sure. My name is Tim Nijenhuis, and I am originally from the Netherlands. Fell in love with a girl from Toronto, and Southern Ontario has been my home since 1996. And I've done all kinds of different things. I've been a carpenter. I was a high school music teacher for 10 years and got involved in the film industry. And through the film industry, I was able to start my own business doing murals. And I've been doing that full time for the last 13 years.
Wow. So, and you did say earlier that you are a musician. So what is for you, what is it that you enjoy in music?
Well, I write music, compose music. I studied film scoring at Berkeley in Boston, and I perform blues music. And like I said, I was a high school music teacher for 10 years.
How did you like that? I mean,
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Just fantastic. Investing in the next generation and interacting with youth and teaching them about the value of art and performance art is just incredible.
Yeah.
It's the kind of stuff that no one can ever take away from you.
That's right.
Stuff that you invest in the next generation.
And the arts oftentimes, especially when you're a younger person, it gives you the ability to express yourself, even if you don't have the words to actually describe how you're feeling or why you're feeling the way you are. Music gives you that outlet that's just an extension of yourself. In fact, last night, Gavin Grant was our young speaker at The Dig, which is a contemporary speakeasy that we produce. And he is like a child. He was a child prodigy. I knew him when he was at Pueblo County High. He's now up at CSU Pueblo, but he is a double major, music and physics. Right on. And his talk was looking at really how music and physics actually are the drivers for how he sees the world. And I have a book coming out, which is on the intersection of Zen Buddhism and quantum physics, which helps you navigate chaos. And the chapter that I gave him is Datsuzoku, which is the art of liberation. And I use, classical music and classical dance as the structures that allow you to be free and to really kind of break the rules, because you've got those guardrails. So jazz, for example, and then contemporary or free form. So he did this whole presentation last night. So it's just wonderful to see these young people that find those gifts, and then if they're able to articulate it, really takes them.
That's fantastic too, to see the connection between music and physics.
Right.
I do a lot of connection between music and math.
Wow. Okay.
I use a lot of math in my composition.
Right.
When composing music.
Right.
But I use the same philosophy in designing murals. And you may be familiar with the golden ratio.
Yes.
And the Fibonacci series.
Yes.
And those are all part of my mathematical calculations and my three-dimensional illusions. And it's like a driving force through all my art, whether it's performance art or paintings.
Yeah. And I think once you get, first of all, when you see like a finished mural, you're already, like you're inspired, and for younger people who might understand all of those a bit more abstract or a bit more foundational, just in terms of how things actually happen and how they, remain or disappear or what have you. It's really nice when they can actually see, and then through the explanation, you could say, did you realize this? Or did you know this?
Yeah, did you realize the proportions?
Right,
You
exactly.
see the geometric
Exactly.
shapes and how it all relates and how it all balances out.
No, I don't see the world that way, but when I was at Berkeley as an undergraduate, I took physics for non-majors.
Right.
Oh my God, it was like every class was like a magic show. I was like, I can't believe that that's really what's behind that.
So that's Berkeley,
California. Yeah,
Not
UC
Berkeley in
No, not the
Boston.
No, exactly. There's an E there.
Exactly.
No. Yeah, I did my undergraduate work at UC Berkeley, and we had to take one or two like science courses, and I was terrified of all the mathematics and the programming and all of that. But I did computer programming. Terrified me, but it was a great course. And then I did the one for physics for non-majors, which was fantastic. It really did open up just to see the world through that lens, which is not the way I see the world. But it just made it easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like all of the things that you're doing are somewhat interconnected in a lot of ways, and storytelling really does seem to be one of the drivers. And why don't you describe, before we get into how you actually arrived here, what is the subject matter of the mural that you just finished?
Well, the subject matter of all my murals relates to metamorphosis, transformation, because I believe public art has a transformational power. For its viewers, for its neighborhood, for a community. And I try to make art that is appealing to every walk of life. I want art to be a positive influence. You can use art for all kinds of purposes, but I really insist on using it for positive energy, actually. And so that's part of this mural as well. But we're at the levee, and there's water, and there's people fishing. So I was inspired by that, and I created a mural with an optical illusion of a little boy sitting in the levee with his fishing rod.
And it was interesting when Tim first came in. I had not seen any pictures. However, when I did see the picture, I realized I had seen the work in progress. And I was fascinated by, first of all, the shapes, which of course play into this whole transformation, this illusion that you create. And then of course, the little boy fishing is great, because with fishing, with kayaking, when you look at how a lot of these murals, because we have the winter when the water is low, and then we have the spring and summer where the water is higher. And it's interesting now because, and pretty soon when it's all filled in, they're going to start those kayak tours. And some of the murals are actually playing into the fact that the water level will be right where the kayakers come. You'll be walking on the other side looking at the levee, and you'll see these kayakers, and you think, are those people in the mural or are they actually in the Arkansas? But so it sounds like you submitted an RFP previously. Tell us about that, because you've been working at this a little bit and now you're finally here and you're wrapping up.
Yeah, see, a number of years ago, I saw a public art call for a mural on the levee in the city of Pueblo, and it was the city of Pueblo that actually provided funding for it. So I submitted a design. It was a design based on the 5 flags of the 5 nations that used to rule this town.
Yeah, and I should ask you that, because when you looked at that RFP, and it sounds like this is something you do every year, you look for opportunities where you can contribute your art to projects all over the world. And you came across the Pueblo. Was that just a regular search and you were looking and it came up, or was there a place that you found it? Because I'm curious what you thought when you heard about these flags. And what do you mean Pueblo has all these different nation states?
Well, when it's slow, and for me that's usually the winter time,
right?
I go online and check out all the public art calls that are out there. There's websites dedicated to that.
Right.
There's email lists dedicated to that. And very often there is a city or a town in North America, or in the USA more specifically, looking for mural artists to design a mural that relates to the history and the population of that particular town. So I'm very used to that.
Okay.
So I often do historical research to find out what's most appealing and what should be depicted in a mural that represents whatever town. I've done that in Georgia for the Valdosta University. I've painted murals in northern Michigan. I've painted murals in rural Saskatchewan. And every time you do the research to find out the history of the place and you represent that in the mural. So that made total sense to me, that the mural for Pueblo would have those 5 flags in it.
Right. Well, you know, it'll be interesting. I think what we'll do in the description for this podcast, because we do have, you know, your Instagram account and things of that sort. But if you have any specific links that you would like to point people to that kind of show your journey, like in Georgia and, for example, these other provinces in Canada, we could let our listeners kind of do their own research to see what other projects, you know, that you've done. What's really fun for us here in Pueblo is we had the world record, then we lost it. So now there's this huge desire to get it back. But there's also that whole sense of our immediate community. But then, like you're saying, you know, just with these calls, there is already this community out there of people who are looking for these opportunities.
There's a global community.
Yeah.
And I am happy to say that I'm an international mural artist. Like, I just did a mural in Spain back in May.
Wow.
I've done a mural in Germany. I've done murals in the Netherlands. So I get around and you meet all kinds of artists, and every mural artist has very similar things.
Right,
so
right.
It's a great network, international network.
So when you, I mean, you understand this very clearly, and it's something that you really practice and you continue, you know, to look for more opportunities. But when you look at these other, say, cities or counties, or it could be, you know, at the national level, you know, what is it like when you look at how Pueblo has handled this process compared to, say, some other places?
Yeah, again, it's the places are very unique. So in some cases, for example, an art organization will put out an open call, and it's called an RFQ, request for qualification.
Right.
They understand that making a sketch or a composition takes time, so they don't ask for that. They ask you to provide your portfolio. And if they like your style, they'll shortlist you, they'll pay you for a design, and then if you win the bid, then you end up doing it and getting paid for it.
And that's a very thoughtful and mindful way, because again, artists oftentimes, you have to reverse engineer that, because oftentimes they're not getting paid for anything, maybe until the very end. And even then, sometimes they don't get paid.
Yeah, and then sometimes you have an RFP.
Right.
And an RFP means a request for proposal. So without getting any commitment or any financial compensation, you have to come up with a design.
That's right.
It, and then if they like it, they take it. And that's usually more the bureaucrats that
I would have to
out.
say, because RFP, I mean, those are the 3 nasty letters, or it could be 3 really good letters, depending upon the nature of your department or your organization and what you're trying to accomplish.
But, you know, it's never a waste of time to make a design. And if you're a professional artist, you have to be able to take criticism, but even more so rejection. 95% of your work is rejected. See, I work in 3 different disciplines.
Sure.
Music, art, and film. In film especially, you can spend I had to spend 2 months on some props and a set for a docudrama. So 2 months of work. It was shot in 1.5 days, and it was maybe 20 seconds worth of footage. And then you're lucky because your set was actually like part of the program.
Right, you actually develop,
very often you make sets and props that never see any daylight.
That's right.
So, but hey, you get paid for it, so that's fine. But you have to be able to handle rejection.
Yeah. Which actually, I mean, as you get older, you realize that that's really the one thing in life. And in fact, when I look at applications for students, or I interview, candidates, or, whoever I need to speak to who's trying to qualify for a position or to get a grant or something like that, the ones that kind of have crashed and burned a few times and have picked themselves up, and have honored that rejection as a kind of just a step in the process.
Yeah, and you learn new skills.
That's right.
Every time you make a design, you learn new skills. And if we're talking about reality nowadays, anyway, there's AI.
Yes.
AI is a tool.
Yes.
And it's a tool in my toolbox as well.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid of the generation coming up that uses AI to create things and haven't gone through that cycle of effort and rejection.
That's right. That's right.
So that scares me a little bit for the future of art.
Yeah, one of the things I learned in Japan, and it's actually a forthcoming book, it's titled "No is a Hard Yes," because you get those rejections. And of course, in Japan, while I was growing up and then working officially for the Japanese Foreign Ministry, I can remember being in these discussions, and at the end of the day, my boss would come up and he would ask me, did you really understand, and it's oftentimes listening, but it's not necessarily listening to what's actually being said, but what's not being said. And the fact that you got to know doesn't mean it's over with and done. That means you just got to work harder to get closer to yes. And so again, it gets back to that whole sense of rejection.
Yeah, and it is brought to you in very different ways, depending on what culture you're in. You mentioned Japan. One of my jobs in the past was selling used pianos that we would import from Japan.
Wow.
And it's very interesting dealing with that culture.
And I'm sure they were in great condition, because the Japanese do the same thing with cars. They only keep them for a year or two. And they have to get the latest model. So everyone in the world wants to get a used car from Japan because they take care of them.
So these were used pianos that were brand spanking new.
I didn't even think, well, and it makes total sense, because when you think about the nation, which has half the U.S. population in a country the size of California, I mean, you have to even show proof of a parking space before you can even buy a car. So this notion of space is really, really important. That's fascinating.
I can relate to that too, growing up in the Netherlands.
Well, yes, of course.
It's a country, densely populated,
with a lot of water too. So with this particular project, when did you actually start the process of, and then I should ask you, what's it like for you? Because I talk to every artist painting at 45 degrees. How do you approach that? Because I've heard, I think every story is different for those that really have not even done anything at 45 degrees, let alone paint.
Well, it's a challenge, and saying yes to challenges has gotten me where I am. I never turn down a new challenge.
Sure.
And I don't paint canvases. I only paint murals. And murals are already a challenge. They're large. You have to treat the wall like a contractor, right? Often you have to fix up the mortar work. I've even replaced entire bricks and blocks before I could start a mural. So that's very much part of my process, is to prep the wall and to deal with boom lifts or swing stages and what have you.
Right.
So working on like rappelling off a 45-degree piece of concrete is not that challenging compared to some of the other things that I have done.
Right. And what's interesting about the whole evolution of the new levee is they looked back, because what's interesting about Pueblo, and this is historical, back in the 1970s, a group of people started what is known as the Art Center, the Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center, which really was kind of the fine art, venue for the arts. And then at the same time, there were these kind of guerrilla, in the middle of the night gangster kind of muralists and painters and graffiti artists and taggers who went onto the levee and painted and then vanished. And then that built on top of it. So it's a wonderful story, because I think murals, if you come to Pueblo and you're a first timer, everywhere you look, you're going to go, my God, there's murals everywhere. And you get this sense of how murals and graffiti art and tagging are really a form of self-expression.
For sure.
And that was what was wonderful about the art center, was that was the highbrow, that was the fine arts, the country club, of the arts. And then you had this just underground, just fresh, process. And of course, then it became a little bit, okay, now what's going on here? Because you can understand the Conservancy District, you're concerned about safety, about security, about what's being painted. But over time, when Cynthia Ramu tells the story of how that relationship evolved, not just in terms of putting the murals on the levee, but also building relationships to secure the paints, to secure everything that would be necessary, because they use recycled paints. There was a whole drive in the early years, but it's wonderful to see how over time, and now there's literally a position, with the Conservancy District that is responsible for what is taking place right now.
So it's building that bridge, right?
Exactly,
between the highbrow art and the public art.
Right.
And I encounter that too, that tension sometimes between the galleries and public artists like myself. In the film industry, you meet a lot of artists that didn't quite make it, and that's why they work in the film industry.
Sure.
And it's
creatives are very fluid. They're very nimble.
Yeah, you have to be. You have to be. Like what I teach artists that are young is be versatile.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of trying everything.
Right.
But that aside, there's always that tension, right, between the professional artist that went to school for art and is trying to get into galleries, and then there's me who studied music and does public art and commercial art. Right. And I've received criticism for that. It's like, oh, you're a sellout because you make public art, and you're kind of a slut, prostituting yourself to the man. Right. And I was like, well, what is the alternative? Well, the alternative is you have to change the world with your art. You have to express yourself. And they said, okay, so how do you do that? Oh, I studied steel sculptures. Okay. And how many pieces have you done? Oh, I've done 3 in the last 7 years. Right. I do 15 to 20 murals a year that millions of people see every day. So who's actually making a change in the world? Right. Who's making a difference?
That whole thing about change too, and because you never know where someone or some group or some organization is in that greater kind of trajectory of life. And sometimes it can be the most subtle. It could just be this moment where you have this deep breath and you see something fresh. You don't even maybe even understand what it is that you're seeing. And for me, it is about those small changes that kind of register. Yeah, there are going to be those moments where you may even come to tears because you're just seeing something that's so extraordinary. But I think when you look at the greater, arc of just art and storytelling, it's in all of those, it's in the minutia of all those different things that gives more and more people the opportunity just to take their brain for a moment, shut it down.
To affect people.
Yeah, exactly.
And affect people in a positive
way.
Yeah.
And art, and that's the beauty of art too, whether you're in visual arts, you're in performing arts, you're in music, any of those areas, those are the people that have always never feared, you go to the worst neighborhoods, they're always out there making change, sometimes it takes them forever. Other times it happens overnight. And sadly, what happens is when all of a sudden people figure out, oh, they're up to something. This is really cool. This is great. And then you start seeing more people come.
And you bring people together. There's a neighborhood in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario. It's Barton Street. And Barton Street is known for one thing, prostitution. But it used to be a big shopping street. But with the strip malls coming in and the blocks, right, that kind of went to the wayside. And we've gone in there and painted murals. I have 7 murals on that street alone. And what happens when you're painting these murals, you see the response of the people. Hamilton is very open-minded, and people start a conversation anytime. Right. They're very easygoing, kind of like people in Colorado. Which is why I love being
and Pueblo is noted for being very friendly, very friendly.
Start a conversation just like that, which is very similar to what I experienced in Hamilton. So I'm painting on Barton Street, and there's a real estate agent. He's like, wow, I love your mural, man. This is great. And I see a city council member. Hey, I love your mural, man. Great job. And a prostitute walks by and says, hey, great mural, man. Love the job. So everybody, no matter where they're coming from,
right.
has the same reaction to the artwork.
Right.
And that is what brings people together.
No, I think
It's a commonality.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. I had a gallery downtown, just down the street here, Kadoya. I still have it. It's now a nonprofit where I actually, I fund artists, in their projects instead of paying for the brick and mortar, the operations of a gallery. So I'm still giving back to artists, but one day a year, I would let any graffiti artist, tagger, they all would sign up. I took everything out of the gallery and they painted every single surface of the inside of the gallery. And then we would do a poetry reading or we'd do some type of a music event. But I'll never forget, there were these two women from the South Side. And, depending upon where you are, Pueblo has a lot of alleyways.
Yeah.
And I could hear them whispering. This one woman goes, "Look at that drawing up there, that looks like the thing on your fence in the backyard. Isn't that beautiful?" So I'm thinking, here is where these two women would probably be complaining or not really understanding the significance of that little piece of art that some kid or some adult put up, either during the day or the middle of the night. But here's the two of them coming together. For me, the reason I did it is because it seems like once you get it up on a gallery wall, it's like fine art. Well, if it's in an alleyway, why isn't it fine art there?
Exactly.
So I did that a lot. It was fun to see how people would respond to that. Because if you spend even just a short amount of time, whether you're looking at the trains, because we still have 1 million freight cars that come through Pueblo a year. And our train culture is huge. So you could look at freight trains, you can look at, buildings, you can look at, infrastructure for highways, you look at the levee, you can see all these different platforms. So that type of storytelling it's been kind of part of the culture. Plus, Pueblo, for a long time, was a single industry, steel. Blue collar.
Very similar to Hamilton. Hamilton built the steel for the car industry in Detroit.
There you go.
And it has changed over time. It has become more of a white collar city. We have 6 hospitals in our city.
Wow.
So you see a very big trend of blue collar turning into white collar.
Right.
And it has a great influence on the arts as well.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, steel and I just actually wrote in the Pueblo Star Journal in the current July issue, our steel mill, which is technically Russian owned through an international kind of agreement, and of course got hit by sanctions through the UK because of one of the oligarchs. But Atlas Holdings out of the East Coast has just made the agreement to purchase it. So it will return back to technically U.S. ownership. So it'll be interesting to see how this all evolves, because they are almost finished with, I think it's upwards of about $300 million upgrade. This will be the #1 producer of rail for railroads, and they're a quarter mile. They're huge, long segments.
Wow.
Which, and then the way that the mill is actually powered, eventually when Comanche 1 and 2 are shut down, which I think is still not until 2030 into that time period, but it will be wind and solar, it will be renewable energy that will actually be producing this rail, which is 100% salvage. So it'll be the first green steel mill technically in the world. And the New York Times recently did a beautiful article on how this blue collar steel mill is going to become a green mill, and it'll be the first of its kind.
And see, developments like that, where do they come from?
Exactly.
From creative thinking.
Exactly.
And that's why the arts are so important.
Yeah. No, that's one of the beautiful things.
Creative thinking.
So talk a little bit about just your process now. So you were here previously. And so what was that like, getting all that ready? And now you're just right off of signing the work from this afternoon.
The reason I ended up, I submitted that design, with the 5 flags. And I was rejected. But I picked up some other commissions.
You're never rejected when you're in Pueblo. You just come back for another time.
I picked up some other commissions, one in southern Saskatchewan. Which is, far west from where I am.
Right.
I drove 2 days to get there.
Yeah, people don't realize that Canada is massive.
It is massive. It is way bigger than the United States.
Yes, exactly.
So I drove to Saskatchewan, and then I had a commission in Colorado anyway. So I thought, you know what?
Where's
Pueblo
the commission in Colorado?
That was the Fraser Mountain Mural Festival.
Yes, yes.
And actually, this coming August, I'm participating in that for the third time.
Wow.
So basically, from Saskatchewan down to Colorado,
Right.
In my travels, I figured, okay, I'll stop in Pueblo then,
Yeah.
and do a mural. And that's
Which
how I
is
ended
what
up.
we, and it's interesting because I was explaining to you earlier about the Nuckolls Packing Company, which of course was after steel, it was the second largest employer. And of course, it had its hard times. And in 1980, finally shut down. And of course, then for decades, it became one of the most attractive places for graffiti artists and muralists.
Yeah,
and when
no
you
doubt.
go inside, actually, one of the books we're about to publish is graffiti art at Water Tower Place. But there are artists from Russia, from Europe, from Latin America, from Asia, but there's always been this tradition of muralist artists coming into Pueblo. They will surf on someone's couch,
Yep.
and they'll be
that's
put up.
exactly what I'm doing.
And basically, then they will finish these works. So when you go through these buildings, sadly, that's a situation where they tried to adaptively reuse a meatpacking plant. Never really worked out. But, now there's this real opportunity to create a whole new kind of a vertical urban village, while honoring, instead of painting over all of those. Most of the people really want that to be part of the interior, part of the experience. Because a meatpacking plant is kind of a wild place with the kill floor on the top and everything else in between.
The energy in a space like that.
Oh, we've
be
been working on
quite
that for
interesting.
yes. But again, that's where the creative arts, they're kind of the first to even want to go in there.
Yeah, no, that's always how it happens.
Yeah.
We see that again in my hometown, Hamilton, as well. There's one of the main streets is called James Street, and it was dilapidated, and the rent was cheap. So a lot of artists moved in there.
Of course.
Started galleries, and then what they did was every second Friday of the month they would switch out all the art that they had and have wine and cheese and stuff like that. And then there were theater people moving into that neighborhood, and they started what's called the art crawl. And that's now a huge thing for our hometown.
I've heard that in we have First Friday Art Walk, but I've heard about these crawls.
Yeah, so every second Friday of the month in Hamilton, there's a huge art crawl. And now it's become a massive organization with street performers. And as a musician, I perform pretty much every single time when I have the chance. And tens of thousands of people from all over just walk the streets and check out all the artisans and enjoy the live music and the acrobats and the theater productions, and it's fantastic. And it all started with low rent art galleries.
Right. So when you talk about the current work that you're just finishing up, because you do use a lot of elements of especially when you're talking about the kind of the graphic nature of the design with the illusion, those three-dimensional kind of, because if you look at it, from one place, it looks very different from another place.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that is kind of one of your signatures when you start looking at your body of work. Is that something you try to include in?
Like I said earlier, I try to bring people together from different walks of life.
Right.
So that's why I combine abstracts, geometric art with realism.
Right.
Because you bring two worlds together like that. And if you add the element of an optical illusion, then you really captivate someone's attention. Then it's not just a painting on a wall.
Right.
It just becomes part of your reality, and it becomes entertaining. Right? So that's always an avenue that I pursue.
Because I've been to, and I'm fascinated, I'm hoping that we've talked about it a little bit here in Pueblo. We have the Riverwalk.
Yeah.
And during the winter, they have to drain it, and then they clean it. And I've always said, once you clean it, just once, let us go in and do a chalk art mural festival on that surface, because I love these 3D chalk art festivals, like on the sidewalks.
That's fantastic.
So we're thinking about, but when did that was there someone's work that you saw, or was there a moment when you go, God, I got to do this large scale on one of these murals?
Well, I grew up in an artistic family. My dad was employed as a graphic designer. My great-grandfather was a successful artist with paintings and things like that. And there's actually a whole
there's a whole stream there.
Family tree full of artists.
Wow.
Yeah. We actually had a family exhibition years ago where 20 of us had art.
Wow.
On display.
Where did you do that? Where did you
that was in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands? How fantastic.
Yeah. So it kind of runs in the family. And So that was one thing. My dad had a book also of mural art, and I was very inspired by that, particularly the three-dimensional ones. And another huge influence in my artistic life is M.C. Escher, Dutch graphic.
I was going to ask you if that has been an influence. Yeah.
And we had one of his most famous works is called Metamorphosis, and we had that entire piece in our hallway in our house.
Wow.
So I was very inspired by that, the transformative aspect of it, the tessellations that are in there, and again he uses three-dimensional illusions as well.
Well, I love it because you just end up going in circles, and you're like, wait a second,
so
where did I start?
It blows your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's always been part of my creative process.
So, and the colors that you used are really, I love the colors that you've used on this particular mural in Pueblo, and people will easily, when you're down towards the GH Nuckolls on the western, suspension bridge, you'll be able to see this particular. But I've noticed that I love those colors. How do you describe those colors?
Well, there's a whole psychology behind colors, right? As you know. And if you do something that is bright red and bright yellow, it may be a bit too strong. It makes you think of McDonald's, like quickly buy food and get out of here, right? It doesn't have a calming influence.
Right.
And if you make things too dark and too brooding, then that's not the thing that you want either. So the colors I picked here are fresh. They're bright, they're fresh, and they don't conflict with the water and the greenery around it.
Right.
But it still stands out.
And it has a really fresh kind of contemporary kind of look to it, and it's more tonal in the way that the color changes, especially on the far right and the far left side, because when you look at it, you see these geometric patterns going, I don't know which way, they go both ways or every
they
way.
do. Yeah.
And then you have the boy seated in the middle, which is just like you've actually expanded one of those other areas.
Exactly.
And seated as we were talking about earlier, they plan to put somewhat of what we would call stadium seating, just a little bit further down. So it's interesting that this is kind of a prelude to what will be happening down a little bit further.
Yeah, and the fresh bluish green that I use, like I said, it's fresh, it's new. So it even adds to that idea of transformation, metamorphosis, renewal.
Yeah. No, I loved it because as you move your way down towards northern New Mexico, and I go down to Santa Fe once a month, there is a blue that is so much attached to the Southwest style, which I'm not a big fan of that type of art. I totally respect it. And like Georgia O'Keeffe, and you look at all those great masters, but there's something about that more commercialized mainstream kind of Southwest where you get those turquoises, those yellows. And it was so nice to see something that, because I don't even know what color it's. Is there a name for that color, or did you create that?
It's
because
kind of like a mint blue.
Yeah, it's a very different color. I like that part of it.
It's a greenish blue. It's aqua, right?
And I haven't looked. So is the boy? Do you show? Is it just the string in the water, or how? I haven't. I got to look at the picture again to see.
Well, you have to just go walk over.
I was going to say. So do you wait for the water level to rise? Is it designed so that his fishing line will be in the water?
Will be in the water.
I see. I love that part of it. I
actually put an actual bobber with a line in there.
Oh, so okay. So then, if you were
three-dimensional
and you told me once you're the GH Nuckolls Bridge, pretty much in the center, when you're on the suspension, you literally will then see him live in 3D.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love that. And what have you you said earlier you don't have names?
No, I don't
for
like
these.
To give names. No.
So how did you? Is there a way to put that in the box when you have to fill out the application?
Putting a name is on a piece of art to me is like selling it like fast food.
Yeah.
It's too commercial.
Yeah.
I want people to work for it. I want people to think about it. I want them to come up with their own ideas.
Right.
I don't want to dictate what someone's reaction is going to be. Right?
So if you were to put, like, for example, and I don't know if this even exists, I'm sure someone after after someone listens to this podcast, we're probably going to see a little plaque on the bridge with 2 feet prints, stand here.
Yeah.
I mean, that would probably be one of the best ways to title is
you
just
could do that.
stand here.
Yeah. Stand here, have a look.
And have a look. And what do you see? And then people go, oh my God, did you see that? Is that a real person or is that just, no, but, and I think that's the beauty when I went to my very first, the sidewalk chalk art, the 3D. I mean, those are just friggin' amazing. And then all of a sudden you're just 2 inches away from one space and it's absolutely flat.
Yeah, and the math involved.
Ooh, there you go. There you go.
Have it again.
Yeah,
the connection between math and painting. In some cases, in order to create the proper perspective, I put a screw in the wall and a wire. So I can determine the vantage point.
There you go. There you go. Which makes total sense.
Yeah. And sometimes while you're painting it and you're painting these weird angles and you think this is not making any sense, but you have to trust the math behind it.
Well, no,
and then in the end it turns out.
And I think earlier, before we started the podcast, now that I've lived in Pueblo, 15, 16 years, I've seen just about every approach.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of large scale and, some people have the grid pattern, and others, it's just a given talent and they just get up there and it works.
Yeah, I look at the wall, I look at all the elements in there, the windows, the drainage pipes and what have you, but I will put a screw in the wall with a wire.
Well, that totally makes it totally, well, it anchors the whole thing. I mean, it's like the whole universe at that moment is really suspended at that center of, that is literally where the critical mass is.
Yeah, and I look around, like, how will people see this thing? And that's the same here with this mural.
Right.
I saw the bridge, and I thought, okay, we're going to make one that's going to be best visible from the bridge.
Yeah.
So you have to consider your vantage point of the average onlooker, and on that basis, you determine where that screw goes.
Right. And the subject matter is universal. You could be a child, you could be a young adult, you could be a senior citizen, remembering those good old days. And as I said earlier, I meet these people who are in their 80s, 90s, who have been fishing in these little spots and say we're kids and they're still going back. So there's a little, it's a very poignant kind of, just this moment of...
Again, it relates to the audience.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm all about.
Exactly. In terms of the process, I know some are done solo, others there's small teams, and I know there's a whole list of volunteers who, whenever an artist needs a team of people to help, create the final product. What was that like for you? How did that work with this particular project? Were you mostly solo? Did you have other people volunteer and help you out?
No, I actually tapped into the art community here.
Fantastic.
Had a few artists help out. This is a volunteer effort, right? And maybe that's going to change someday. I think push for that.
I think once we get towards the world record, I think there should be. It should.
You're
be
going to
true.
get there faster.
Right,
if
no,
there's actual remuneration.
Well,
available,
I've seen some. There's one woman who's done 36.
Yeah,
Tia
exactly.
Munson's done 30s, and I thought 36.
Yeah, she helped me on the first mural.
Did she?
Here,
the first mural?
This is actually the second mural.
Second mural. Okay, fantastic.
But I love working with people with different styles, different talents, different level of experience. I always provide opportunity for apprentices as well in my own business. So to have a crew it's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I know that Cynthia said just before we started the podcast that she's getting ready to upload the videos, I guess, that she took today. So I know people will be able to actually see the work. But this one you really have to encourage people to go.
I finished the mural just now, but I actually started it last year.
Right.
And last year, while I was painting the boy, I actually made a time-lapse video of it, which is available on my YouTube
Okay, so we'll
channel,
make sure we get that link in
on
there.
my Instagram.
Fantastic.
And then you can see my process, actually, how it all works.
Well, why don't we do this? I think we're going to wrap. Is there anything you'd like to add to this conversation before I'm going to have you just for just the audio portion, just tell people where they can go, especially your Instagram and your website. And then we will also include that in the actual description. So it'll be fed to all of the podcast services, so they'll be able to do that. But why don't you tell people where they can go? For example, Instagram, where can they go?
Yeah, my Instagram handle is @Nijenhuis Productions. So that's all written out in letters, NINEHOUSE Productions. So @Nijenhuis Productions. And there's nijenhuisproductions.com, which is my website. And I also have a YouTube channel. You can find links to all my social media on my website.
Great.
Also on Facebook. My kids have always said, "Oh, you should go on TikTok, Dad." And no, my clients are on Facebook and Instagram.
There you go. There you go.
That's why I'm
and you need to go where your clients are.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how about your kids? I mean, how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids.
3 kids. And what are their ages?
27, 25, and 22.
So they're not, well, they're kids. For you, they're always kids.
Yeah.
And did that artistic kind of line kind of reach all of them too?
Yeah, they're all creative in different ways. And actually, my daughters have worked with me.
Oh, fantastic.
You know, if I have to do a mural with that involves a lot of trees, and I need leaves painted, it's like, here's some green paint leaves all day. and they love doing it.
Well, then they're part of the story.
To your kids as
they're part of the story.
Yeah, and my son is also creative in a musical way. He plays guitar, sing songs, and things like that.
So in music, where could we find you? I mean, it sounds like on YouTube, do you have?
Yeah, I have on my YouTube channel, Nijenhuis Productions. If you put that in YouTube, you'll see some of my mural work, but you'll also see some of my live blues performances.
So next time, what you need to do, we have some amazing, I mean, there's different venues, different nights of the week where we've got live jazz on Wednesday nights at the Broadway. We've got other venues all throughout town. Maybe what we need to do, and I can't imagine this hasn't been thought of or done yet, but you should, now that you've been here, this is the second mural, what we need to do is to get you to do a proposal for a third one and then include a music portion.
Well, actually, I have performed music the last 2 times I've been here as well.
Oh my gosh, see, like and you're leaving tomorrow, so it's like...
My host, Jay Rosenberg, who's...
I love Jay's Sugar Cube House. And I was trying to get there. I know, and he invited me, I could not get there on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
You had it, he told me, and I'm very good about getting there when I can, but I told him we were definitely going to do the podcast because Cynthia had asked me. And so I'm glad we were able to do this. And then I hope you share it too with your fan base, because it's an extension of everything that we've done. But we thank you here in Pueblo for coming and returning and for offering to do, what I think is one of the most interesting murals that we have that kind of literally comes out of the levee wall.
Well, and like I said, I travel the world doing what I do, which is an incredible privilege. And I've been all over the United States, but I find Colorado stands out.
Yo, that's awesome.
People are hospitable, they're tolerant, and I feel very welcome here, very comfortable.
I think it's part of that.
Especially Pueblo. I can relate to it so much. Yeah. It's a city that has fought against the water, just like the country of my birth. So there's a connection there. And again, the people here have been so hospitable and so supportive. And again, so easy to talk to.
Yeah, I think it has to do, with that frontier kind of mentality, because
and also a mixture of different cultures.
Exactly.
And you have to figure out, where you are and relate to different cultures.
It's messy, but that's where all the humanity is.
Well, that's what my city of Hamilton is like, too. There's Irish, Portuguese, Polish, Dutch, and we all live together and have to relate to each other.
It's a unique place, because when I first arrived, I really realized at that moment when I drove into town how kind of centrally isolated it really is. And when you start studying Pueblo has never really wanted to be part of the northern New Mexico story, and it's never wanted to be a part of, anywhere from Colorado Springs north. It really, because of the topography, because of the mountains, because of the weather, it really has created this space for...
it's a great, unique space in the middle of the United States.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you for listening to the special edition of 45 Degrees, and we will catch you next time. Thank you so much.